Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradha Hari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradha Hari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradha Hari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradha Hari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradha Hari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradha Hari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Sham Sundaradha Sham Sundarade Jaya Krishna Balaram Krishna Balaram Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Vishpad Paramahamsa Varagutaya Sota Satta Shishamachila Aisi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jaya Vishpad Paramahamsa Varagutaya Sota Satta Shishamachila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Anantakudi Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Sirup Sisanatan Bhattaragnachi Jiv Gopalavatada Saragnathari Goswami Prabhu Ki Prem se ko Sri Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivjari Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Ki Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Cham Kunda Radha Kundagiri Govardhana Ki Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Sri Mathura Dham Ki Sri Mayapur Dham Ki Sri Jagannathpuri Dham Ki Tulsi Maharani Bhakti Devi Ki Ganga Yamuna Devi Ki Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Sri Sri Gaunitai Ki Sri Sri Krishna Puraram Ki Sri Sri Radha Shama Sundar Ki Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda Ki All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru, Sri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Reading from the Bhagavad-gītā as it is, 13th chapter, text number 24. Ya evam vetti puruṣaṁ prakṛtiṁ ca guṇāsa sarvathā vartamānopi na sa bhūyo bhijāyate ya evam vetti puruṣaṁ prakṛtiṁ ca guṇaiḥ sarvathā vartamānopi na sa bhūyo bhijāyate ya evam vetti puruṣaṁ prakṛtiṁ ca guṇaiḥ sarvathā vartamānopi na sa bhūyo bhijāyate evam vetti puruṣaṁ prakṛtim ca guṇaiḥ sarvathā vartamānopi na sa bhūyo bhijāyate ya evam vetti puruṣaṁ prakṛtim ca guṇaiḥ sarvathā vartamānopi na sa bhūyo bhijāyate. Ya evam vetti puruṣaṁ prakṛtiṁ ca guṇaiḥ saha sarvathā vartamāno na sa bhūyo bhijāyate. Mataji? Ya evam vetti puruṣaṁ prakṛtiṁ ca guṇaiḥ saha sarvathā vartamāno na sa bhūyo bhijāyate. Ya, anyone who evam thus vetti understands puruṣam, the living entity, prakṛtim, material nature, ca, and guṇaiḥ, the modes of material nature, saha, with, sarvathā, in all ways, vartamānaḥ, being situated, api, in spite of, na, never, saha, he, bhūyaḥ, again, abhijāyate, takes his birth. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki. Translation. One who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity and the interaction of the modes of nature, is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth here again, regardless of his present position. Purport. Clear understanding of material nature, the Supersoul, the individual soul, and their interrelation makes one eligible to become liberated and turn to the spiritual atmosphere without being forced to return to this material nature. This is a result of knowledge. The purpose of knowledge is to understand distinctly that a living entity has by chance fallen into this material existence. By his personal endeavor in association with authorities, saintly persons and a spiritual master, he has to understand his position and then revert to spiritual consciousness or Kṛṣṇa consciousness by understanding Bhagavad-gītā as it is explained by the Personality of Godhead. Then it is certain that he will never come again into this material existence. He will be transferred into the spiritual world for a blissful, eternal life of knowledge. So here, Kṛṣṇa is speaking to Arjuna and assuring Arjuna, and for that matter assuring us, for whom ultimately Kṛṣṇa spoke Bhagavad-gītā, that one who is understanding this philosophy, vetti, and so philosophy means transcendental philosophy regarding this transcendental subject matter, regarding the Supreme Lord, and then the living entity, and specifically regarding this material nature, the three modes of material nature. That is actually known as sambandha jnana. That is the beginning of devotional service. To understand, first of all, that we are not this body, we are spirit soul. That understanding that somehow, as Prabhupada is also explaining in Purport, we have come into this material existence. But then we have to understand that we belong to the transcendental realm, and that we have a relation with the Supreme Lord, and ultimately we have nothing to do with this material world. So if one is clear in this understanding, And then if one is practically engaged in spiritual activities, in devotional service, under the guidance of the spiritual master, with the help of the devotees, by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, and then one can make steady progress. That is known as abhijāyate. When one is following the process of devotional service and advancing in spiritual life, but basically by being fully engaged in spiritual activities and with transcendental knowledge acquired from the scriptures, from the spiritual master, also being held by Kṛṣṇa within the heart, by the Supersoul. Then one can make steady process in spiritual life. And then one can come to the highest stage, that is pure devotional service, that is known as prayojan jnana or prayojan tattva. Prayojan means here the necessity. So we have to develop love of Godhead. Then we can realize practically Krishna's transcendental beautiful form. And then we can practically realize our identity as eternal servant of Krishna and our relationship with Krishna. So that is the goal, to be attained. And so when we realize our transcendental nature and are fully engaged in spiritual activities, then one can enter the pastimes of the Lord. So Prabhupada has explained that in the introduction to the Bhagavad-gītā as Swarup Siddhi, when one is realizing one's transcendental nature by practical realization, and then after giving up the body, when one is entering the pastimes, that is known as Vastu Siddhi. Because in the beginning, or when one has attained Swarup Siddhi, one has realized one's transcendental spiritual form, Satchidananda Swarup, and our relationship with Krishna and in Golok, in the conjugal relationship, Madhurya Bhav, or the parental relationship, Vatsalya Bhav, or Ras, and then Sakya Ras, friendship, or in servitorship. So when the realization is there, then only we can go to the planet where Krishna performs his pastimes, and then one can enter into the pastimes. On the stage of Swarup Siddhi, one may see Krishna and Krishna's pastimes, and one may be able to do with one's physical body, one can engage in the service of the Lord, or even by consciousness, one may mentally offer something to the Lord, but actually one cannot yet enter the pastimes of the Lord, because one is not there yet. That is only possible when one will take birth where Krishna performs his pastimes. Then one can enter the pastimes, and that is the actual liberation. And then, having attained that stage, one will not take birth again in this material world, but one will be situated in the spiritual world. And in the spiritual world there is no Maya, so there is no chance of coming to this material world, to fall in this material world. If one is engaged in the direct service to Krishna, and there's a transcendental relationship, so there's no Maya there. So one will never fall down. But if Krishna is coming to this world, and so the associates of the Lord or Mahaprabhu is coming, they are also coming with Krishna, but they are never under the influence of Maya. They are free from the influence of Maya. Just like Krishna is transcendental, the eternal associates are also transcendental. That we have to understand, and so that is the goal of life. So in several places Krishna has explained that, just like also in the 4th chapter, text number 9, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vetti tattvataha. One in truth, vetti tattvataha, who knows in truth my janma, my appearance or my birth, karma, my activities or pastimes, dibya, who are transcendental, which are transcendental, he will, so he is properly situated, who knows properly. So then so, Tyaktva Dhyampana Janma Naiti Mamiti Swajuna. After giving up this body, he will not take birth here again. So in several places, in the 8th chapter also, later on also, 18th chapter, in several places Kṛṣṇa has explained, one who comes to me, he will never come back to this material world, it is clear. So, two kinds of living entities, Nitya Siddha, Nitya Bhada, that has been explained also here in this Bhagavad-gītā 15th chapter, Kṣara and Akṣara. Those who are infallible, the Nitya Siddha, they will never come to this material world, not possible, because there is no Maya in the spiritual world. But then the others, they are on the Nitya Bhada, they are fallible. So they're there in the spiritual sky, and when the material world is manifested, so they come to this material world, some of them. When the spiritual realm, the one part is there, so first, because this material world is only sometimes manifested. So first the material, so the elements are there of the material world, but they are not manifested. That is known as pradhan. But by Kṛṣṇa's will it becomes manifest, it becomes mahatattva, prakriti, material nature, and then the material elements are there, and then with the help of Karana-dakshay Vishnu, Garva-dakshay Vishnu, Kshira-dakshay Vishnu, then this material world is manifested, and then the living entities who are fallible, so who are not engaged in the service of the Lord, who are conditioned, they also eternal servants of Kṛṣṇa, they come to this material world. But by coming in contact with the devotee, with a pure devotee, the spiritual master, the representative of the Lord, or the different personalities of Godhead. So Mahaprabhu himself, he has come. He is the Supreme Lord, Swayam Bhagavan, but he came as a devotee to give this Kṛṣṇa consciousness to others. So by the mercy of Mahaprabhu, his representative, the spiritual master of the pure devotees, one can be engaged in devotional activities, and by practicing one can realize Krishna Sarup and our own Sarup. And then one can enter the pastimes, and one will never come back to this material world. So that is practically the gist of the essence of so what Kṛṣṇa is explaining here. And those who understand, they will try to be always engaged in spiritual activities. But for the devotee, practicing devotee, so they have to be very diligent and sometimes careful also, because material nature is very strong. And there's a chance of coming again under the influence of material nature. Actually, the sadhaka, practicing devotee, still, he knows I'm the servant of Kṛṣṇa, he knows Kṛṣṇa is the Supreme Lord, he knows I have to serve Kṛṣṇa, and he's trying his best. But because he's not completely free, so he's under the modes of material nature, so therefore there's a chance that he will fall again under the influence of material nature. So one has to be careful in one's devotional practice, in one's devotional service. And so in the conditioned state, one is under modes of material nature, but one is trying not to be too much under the influence of the modes of material nature. And one has to try to be in the mode of goodness. So being tamasima jyotirgamaya. So one should give up this darkness, that means the lower modes of material nature, mode of passion and ignorance. So asatma asatgamaya. So one should be free from that which is asat, that is that which is non-permanent, and go to the permanent, to the transcendental abode. One should be, so that is one of the anattas also, asat trishna, to be, to have thirst to that which is asat, which is non-permanent. That has to be given up. One has to disregard, one has to say no to that. Asat ma, no. And sadgamaya, go to the eternal, the transcendental realm. So Prabhupada used to explain also that we have the choice every second. So, and he was sitting on the Vyasasana and he was showing, you have the choice every second actually. You can go towards Kṛṣṇa or you can go towards Maya. So the choice is there. So we have to choose to surrender to Kṛṣṇa, to serve Kṛṣṇa at every moment. So strong determination must be there, and one has to try to control the mind and senses. Because through the mind and the senses, then the consciousness is actually diverted. So strong utsaha, enthusiasm and nishtha, determination, resolute purpose has to be there, that I have to engage in Krishna consciousness. Strong faith must be there. And then one has to be patient also, because difficulties are there and because of conditioned nature, so there's every chance that the mind and the senses are going here and there, and in this way one is actually diverted from being absorbed in Krishna. So one has to be careful of that, and one has to be aware. And so one has to pray to Guru Gauranga Krishna, and one has to be in good association. Then one is able to overcome the material nature, which is difficult to overcome. Krishna himself is explaining in the 7th chapter, Daivi Yeshamaya Gunamaya, Daivi Yeshamaya Gunamaya, what is it? Daivi Yeshamaya Mamaya Dure, Mamaya Prabhadyante Tamstataiva Vajamyam. So in the 7th chapter, Krishna is explaining Daivi Yeshagunamai. So this Daivi Yeshagunamai, this is my energy, and it's material world. And so it is difficult to overcome for the conditioned soul. But then he's explaining also that those who are surrendered to me, so Daivi Yeshagunamai Mamamaya Duratyaya, Mameve Ye Prabhadyante, Maya Etam Tarantite. So those prapadyam, so those who are surrendered, so they can overcome the illusory energy. So Prabhupada has explained easily, can easily cross beyond it. So for pure devotees it is very easy. He's always engaged in devotional service. But for the conditioned soul it is not so easy to overcome the material energy. So one has to be conscious and one has to be careful. And Prabhupada, of course, is a pure devotee and is always engaged in devotional activities, but even the pure devotee, actually they can feel material energy. They can see the material energy also. They can see Maya. And they can feel, just like when it is cold. A pure devotee is transcendental, but still he can feel the cold also. And therefore in the winter, he will put on a sweater. And Prabhupada has a cap also, Swami hat. Because he feels the cold also. But he's tolerating and he's engaged, but he's always engaged in devotional service. So he's seeing the external energy also, Maya. But he's engaged in devotional service and he's careful. And Krishna will protect. One time Prabhupada was in front of the deities and then tears were coming from his eyes. And then after, as he moved away from the deities, then devotee was asking Prabhupada, so you're crying? Why are you crying? And he was saying, because material energy is very, very strong. So I'm praying to Krishna, please protect me from your external energy. So we have to pray to Krishna to protect us from the external energy, so that we can be always engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, without deviation. So we have to endeavor sincerely, and then we have to pray to Guru Gauranga and Krishna to help us. We have to take shelter of the Vaishnavas. And then together we can overcome this material energy. And then one can attain the highest stage of pure devotional service. And then nihayasya hare dasya karmana marasagira nikirvasa vastu jivan mukta sochate. If one is constantly engaged in devotional service with the body, with the words, with all the senses and one's consciousness, with the mind, then one is considered liberated, even in this material world, even being situated in this material world. That person is known as Jivan Mukta, which is achieved by the special mercy of the Lord and the pure devotees. If you are constantly engaged and if you are praying for His causeless mercy, then we can attain. And so that is actually the goal of life, to become perfect, to be actually realized. So practical realization has to be there. And then one can attain the supreme destination. So one has to be always engaged in the devotional activities, under the shelter of the spiritual master, and especially chanting the holy names, the Maha Mantra, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And it is important, as it is mentioned by Rupa Goswami, that one should hear about Kṛṣṇa, Bhagavat Shravan. Therefore Prabhupada introduced every day hearing the Bhagavatam in the morning, and then also Bhagavad-gītā in the evening. So if we're hearing about Kṛṣṇa, if we're seeing the deity in the temple, then we can remember, and then we can call out to Kṛṣṇa. And then Kṛṣṇa will help. Kṛṣṇa is very eager to bring us back to the spiritual realm. So he's more eager than we are eager to go to him. So if we are sincere then, and we are endeavoring nicely, then Kṛṣṇa's help is always there. And then we can make slowly but surely progress in our spiritual life. But we have to be patient. So because full Kṛṣṇa consciousness, so that is only attained after quite some time. It is not so easily attained and quickly attained. So one has to be enthusiastic, fixed, and one has to be very patient. But for one who starts this process of devotional service, who is always humble, tolerant, respectful, and constantly endeavor for perfection, then now one will attain perfection in due course of time. And so Kṛṣṇa is actually promising. Also the Bhagavad-gītā is explaining, for one who is endeavoring, one who does good, so one who is engaged in devotional activities, ultimately he will not be overcome by evil activities. And even a little advancement on this path can protect one. So that is going to the lower species or hellish existence. So one is protected, and if one is not attaining perfection in this life, so then in the next life there will be a chance again, and Kṛṣṇa will put us in a better position, so that we may be able to make more advancement in spiritual life. So we have to have the faith, and we have to have the conviction that the Kṛṣṇa is always with us, and Kṛṣṇa will always help us, despite so many difficulties which are always there in this material world. Constantly, difficulties are there, from one's own body and mind, from other living entities. So natural catastrophes are there. So all the time, so we can see in our life and we can see in the lives of others. So difficulties are there, so many difficulties. Klesh, adhyatmika, adhibhautika, adhidaivik klesh. But despite all the difficulties, one has to endeavor to the best of one's ability, and Kṛṣṇa will help, and Kṛṣṇa will reciprocate. But we have to be patient also. And understand this material energy, and so understand the nature of this material world. Dukkalayam ashashvatam. This material world is a place of misery. It is like a prison house. You cannot be happy. You are not free in this world. But Kṛṣṇa is there to help us. And he sends his representative. And if you're simply engaged in spiritual activities, and if you are endeavoring, and if you are patient, then we'll attain perfection in due course of time. So Kṛṣṇa is promising also. So there is never any loss in devotional service. Rather, there is always gain in devotional service. Any questions? We'll stop here today. I have some other engagements also. So any question? One question? Okay, we'll stop here. There's some prasadam. You can come here and get some prasad. Hare Krishna.